put on the record part of a Montreal Gazette article dated August 13, 2021. And it concerns the court case brought by the families of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey to obtain information from the Parole Board and Corrections Canada as they prepared for Paul Bernardo's parole hearings. And I quote, "As legal victor, the government wanted the families to pay its legal costs for fighting the killer's privacy in a lump sum of $19,142.27. Lawyers for the government argued the families weren't pursuing public interest litigation, but a personal pursuit. Their personal motivation is to use the information sought to make statements to the parole board, the government agreed. I have a hard time even talking about this, Leader. This is so shameful and so horrific that these families have been tortured by this government. Leader, your government wanted these families to pay the government's legal bills because it was personal to them. It was personal to them that their daughters had been tortured, raped, and murdered. The judge later reduced the amount seeking the costs in the first place. Seeking the amount of costs in the first place, Leader, was wrong, was it not?
Well, thank you for raising this again, Senator Plett. It is difficult to understand the pain that the families of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey must have felt, and we continue to suffer with them as they are reliving the tragedy that befell them. Positions that the government may have taken in the past in the face in litigation are not something that I'm in a position to comment upon, but as a representative of the government in Canada, I understand the preoccupation of those, and I certainly will make inquiries to better understand the circumstances.
Senator Plett.
The preoccupation of those. Leader, in a delayed answer from the Justice Department tabled last fall, the Parole Board said it was aware of the concern with respect to costs. Costs had not been collected, and the Parole Board was considering its position. The answer was tabled more than a year after the original court case ended, yet they were still considering. Costs never should have been sought. And you're right, they continue to suffer. Why do they continue to suffer? Because now the government has decided and they haven't said it, but somehow it's okay to move this murderer to a medium security institution. And they say they have no recourse. Leader, contrary to what you said yesterday, Minister Mendocino has not explained what he meant by saying corrective steps have been taken with the staff, but the buck stops with the minister. Again, contrary to what you said yesterday, Leader, I cannot find on what date Katie Telford knew about Paul Bernardo's transfer. She testified before the House Committee that nothing is ever kept from her boss, Prime Minister Trudeau. Leader, Canadians want to know what happened here. What, Leader, are the answers to my questions? What has Minister Messino done to take corrective steps, and on what date did Katie Telford know? These are simple questions that require simple answers.
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question. I answered to the best of my ability yesterday, but I think Canadians also need to know. I think Canadians also need to know that despite the statements that you've made and the assertions implicit in it, that both the Parole Board of Canada, which I served honorably, I hope, and certainly with great privilege, appointed by the previous government, and correctional services operate independently of the government. The Parole Board decisions are their own decisions. They're not directed by the minister, and nor should they be. And the Correctional Services decisions to evaluate risk and decide whether or not to transfer an inmate from one facility to another are, again, decisions that are made based upon criteria set out in the law and applied objectively and impartially and, importantly, independently of the minister. Canadians need to understand that. The suffering of the families of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey will be with them tragically for the rest of their lives. They do not need to be. But it is also important that Canadians understand that the democratic system in which we live and and upon which we depend does draw distinctions between what is and is not appropriate for governments and politicians to direct.